Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
Motherfucker, give me a...
Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
Motherfucker, give me a...
Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
Motherfucker, give me a...
Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
Motherfucker, give me a specific...
Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
Motherfucker...
Come on out, you rapist!
Dude, I want you to be as smart as I am.
We don't even know if the vaccine worked or not at the time.
Yes, that's what the trials are, dude. That's why these trials. What, are you missing data out there?
But let me,
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I stumbled across a clip that I absolutely had to break down for you. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson having this incredible debate with Patrick Bet-David. What's fascinating is watching how PBD keeps shifting his arguments. First it's about data, then it's about personal choice, then it's about uncertainty. But Neil just calmly addresses each point with logic and evidence. It's honestly a masterclass in how to have a rational discussion about complex topics. Before we dive in, smash that like button and hit subscribe. It really helps us out as we're just getting this channel off the ground. All right, let's get into the video.
today, what do we know about the vaccine today that we didn't know while we were all testing it in America, taking it? What have we learned now?
What do you mean testing it on America? There were tests before it was released.
9 months is not a long time to test.
No, but it was tested.
Yeah, but 9 months. The average is 30. The average is 5 to 10 years. I mean, 9 months is not enough.
Okay, so you have to say
test.
no. You have to ask. Hold on, it was tested in trials. Okay. By the way, I'm not claiming to be the expert on all this. I read all the same things you have, but I'm a scientist, so I read it as a scientist. Okay. There were trials. That's what the point of phase 1, 2, 3 trials are all about. They are tested enough to get data on how to then advise the larger population. Yes, it was tested. For you to say it wasn't tested is a gap between your awareness and understanding how things work and what actually happened. It was tested. If you want it to be tested on millions of people instead of thousands, you can put in for that. You can say, I don't want this unless it's millions. That's okay.
Totally fine with me.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
But
So based on that, do you say, let's keep testing it while the virus keeps spreading? Okay, right. So this is the contest between the information you have available to you at that moment and what's going on outside the lab. People are dying. Hospitals are becoming overloaded. So do you say we have good data on the 1,000? It's not yet at 1 million in case you wanted 1 million. Are you going to say, let's still do it on another, let's wait another 6 months so we get another 1 million in here? Will you do that as a public health professional?
No, I would have said, allow the individual to still have a choice that's okay with 1,000 instead of a few million. Leave the person have the choice, not force him to take it or else you're going to get out of the Marines and you've been doing this for 14 years. Not force him to take it or else you have to quit your job as a nurse.
There's a public health
force versus
there's a
choice.
There's a public health contract that you have signed implicitly as a citizen of a country where in part we depend on each other for health, our wealth, our security, and the like. And that contract is, in the best scientific evidence available at the time, if you do not get vaccinated, you will put other people in this organization at risk, and that organization does not want to take that risk. So you do not have this job anymore if you decline it. So with any public health decision, there has to be a consequence to you not participating in that social contract. Is it your job? In some cases, it was. But no, we're not going to have the army bust into your home and force a needle into your shoulder. That's not going to happen.
We pretty much did that.
Well, only put your job at risk. Yes.
Yeah, 67% of Americans took the COVID. That's force. That's not a choice. That's a lot of force and coercing and pushing going on. But you can't go to the school unless you're vaccinated against mumps. I think that's bullshit.
That's a different country.
Yeah. But
okay, would you want a country?
No, America is supposed to be the one that offers the most freedom. That's what America is supposed to be.
Yeah, okay, so watch.
So for example, if you use that argument, somebody may say, well, freedom of choice, I want to choose what I want to do with the body. You're right.
What body?
If you want to get an abortion, it's your choice.
Your own body.
If you want to get an abortion, get an abortion. If I want to get the vaccine, I get to choose. So you can't force. If I can't force you to get an abortion, you shouldn't be able to force me to get
it's not about you. It's about people you interact with, and that's the social contract of public health.
We don't even know if the vaccine worked or not at the time.
Yes, that's what the trials are, dude. That's why these trials. Are you missing data out there?
But let me.
Oh, this is why I love Neil. Look, Patrick keeps pushing this narrative about rushing into things without proper testing, but Neil just blew that argument apart. The testing was the process. That's literally what clinical trials are designed for. We didn't just wing it and hope for the best. And honestly, it's fascinating how many people in these debates act like they don't understand how research actually works. Like somehow urgency means you skip safety protocols, but that's not what happened. The emergency situation meant more resources, more collaboration, faster approvals, not less rigorous science. Neil nailed it earlier. That's the contest between what you know now and what the world needs in a crisis. Sometimes you have to make decisions based on strong evidence, even when you don't have perfect information, especially in emergency situations. But here's what's really telling about PBD's approach. Watch how he keeps shifting the argument. First, it's not enough testing. Then it's people should have choices. Then it's those choices were restricted. Every time Neil addresses one point, Patrick just moves to the next one. That's not honest discussion. That's just trying to win by constantly changing what you're arguing about. And let's be real. Tyson never said people shouldn't have options. He said decisions have consequences, especially when those decisions affect other people. If you decline, this job may no longer be for you. That's not some authoritarian nightmare. That's just how institutions work. Hospitals, schools, military, they've always had health and safety requirements. You can't ignore safety protocols in high-risk environments and then claim it's about personal freedom. That's not oppression, that's basic responsibility. So when Neil says this is why the trials exist, he's not just making a technical point, he's calling out how shallow this whole line of questioning really is. It's not actually about understanding the science or the process. It's about scoring debate points and appealing to emotions.
Let me ask you a question. Are we saying only one type of scientists are right?
No, we're saying that the system in place.
The 16,000 that signed that.
No. The system in place to test vaccines. Yeah. There's an entire system that's in place. That with review boards and all of it.
And the average.
That's in place. Now you can say, what you can say is, I have a better idea than all these review boards and all these agencies and the CDC. I have a better idea. Here's what you should do. And that would have made everything better. Okay, you can put forth that idea. But what I'm saying is, in a case where you can contaminate someone else, it's not about you. It's about the collective
You're assuming
health.
You're assuming because somebody can take the vaccine, won't get COVID, which, by the way, I don't need to play the clips for you to see it, where everybody said, hey, if you get it, you're not going to get, if you take the vaccine, you're not going to get a Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden. I can give you Fauci. I can give you, and you've seen these clips before. It's not like you've never seen it before.
Yeah, what happened
They were wrong.
Hold on. So, the strain evolved, okay, so that the vaccine that prevented you from catching COVID was tuned to the variant of COVID at the time the vaccine was designed, okay? Over time, there were variants that arose. The vaccine provided partial protection against the new variants, enough to keep you from dying statistically, and to basically keep you out of the hospital. allowing other people with more severe problems to get the hospital attention they required. And so then they would develop the booster and a subsequent mixture of the vaccine. This is what happens every year with a flu shot. They look at how the flu has evolved from one season to the next. And we have.
If you like the video so far, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 3,000 subs. Now let's get back into the video.
What's fortunate is Australia tends to get the variant of flu before we do, because they get their winter in our summer. And then, so we study that, have a forward projection for it. So these annual flu shots are precisely out of the same idea of how this occurs.
How long have those been tested, though? For years. COVID vaccine hasn't been tested for it. It was something we just came out. But let me.
I don't know what point you're making, other than it was tested. You might
9 months is not enough.
You might prefer. No, it's not a matter of time. It's a matter of how many. Yes, time matters, but the number of people is paramount. That's the most important thing. Okay, you don't test it on 10 people. You test it on as many people as you can.
Sure.
I think it was thousands, but
is it fair to say that some of the side effects we may not know for 5, 10, 15, 20 years? You can't, like, they can't say we know 100% the side effects 10 years from now. How are you going to know that?
Yeah. Okay. So no, of course we can't know.
So
that.
then all I'm saying is,
watch. You can't know that.
Okay.
But watch. So I have a whole chapter called Risk and Reward in the book, which tries to sensitize people to when they make a decision, what kind of risk are they absorbing relative to what they're rejecting? Okay. And we're not very good at that, at probability and statistics or analyzing it. That's why TV commercials trying to sell you a product don't just show you data. They show a person speaking of the effectiveness of the product. A single person. I lost 50 pounds. The testimony of an individual should be irrelevant to you relative to the entire set of people who have done it. And you want to look at those statistics, but we're not good at that. And advertisers know that. So they show the testimony of an individual, which is hugely potent in a civilization where we don't think statistically, we think about eyewitness testimony on something. And somehow that is raised to a very high level of influence on our decisions. What I'm saying is, you're not your decision point is not, I'm not going to take the virus because 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what effect it's going to have.
Some may, though. Some may not be comfortable.
Let me finish the sentence. Okay. So you can say, I don't want to take the virus because 5 or 10 years from now, there could be a side effect that we don't see.
Which is a possibility.
Hold on. I'm trying to make a statistical point here. Okay. If you say, I don't want to take the virus because it hasn't been tested for 5 years and there could be some long-term side effect that worries me, okay? In that same moment, there's the risk factor of you getting COVID.
Sure.
Okay? Unvaccinated. At one point, 87% of everyone dying in the hospital of COVID was unvaccinated. Okay. So your risk choice is, I'm not going to take it because maybe somewhere down the line something will happen and we don't know what that is, or I will risk getting COVID. And if I get COVID, depending on your age and other things, there's a 3% chance of me dying in the hospital. That's your choice. Yes.
I love how quiet PBD gets here. It's like he couldn't find the gears to shift anymore. Neil deGrasse Tyson isn't raising his voice. He's not throwing jabs. He's just calmly, methodically walking him through something PBD can't spin his way out of. Basic risk analysis. Patrick throws out the classic question, is it fair to say we won't know the long-term effects for 5, 10, maybe 20 years? And Neil doesn't dodge it. He says, no, of course we can't. But then he delivers the part that actually matters. So your decision is based on something that might happen years from now. Okay. But right now, you're also choosing to take on the immediate, measurable risks we already know about. And that's the thing people don't want to talk about. Not making a decision is still making a decision. And it comes with its own set of risks. Neil completely destroys this idea that you can just sit on the sidelines and somehow avoid all risk. The data was showing real-world outcomes in real time, not theoretical problems decades down the road. Neil pushes it even deeper by exposing how terrible we are at understanding probability. He says, we're not good at statistics. That's why ads show you one person saying I lost 50 pounds instead of showing you the actual success rates. And he's absolutely right. Our brains love stories, not spreadsheets. But when you're making important health decisions, you need data, not anecdotes. This is where Patrick's whole approach falls apart. He's treating uncertainty like it's evidence of something sinister, when really, it's just how science works. Neil doesn't claim perfect knowledge. He talks about evidence, probability, and measurable outcomes. When he says we think we're weighing risks, but we're not, we're just focusing on one uncertainty while ignoring another, that should make everyone pause. This didn't end with some dramatic mic drop moment. It ended with pure logic, undeniable, numbers-based reasoning. And all PBD could do was sit there while that truth settled in. That's what happens when you bring emotions to a data fight.
Yes, but what I see people doing is they focus on one thing, and that's the foundation of their decision, rather than the other chance. And what happens if you get COVID? Now you get long COVID. Now you can have a taste buds for 2 years or whatever it is for long COVID.
Yeah.
You're on a ventilator in the hospital, possibly dying. Like what? Where is the? So I looked every day once a week. I looked at the statistics.
Mhm.
How many people are getting COVID? What's the rate? What's the rate of hospitalization? What's the rate of deaths? Where is it by state?
I had to look at it.
Where-
My board forced me to look. We're in the business, so
As
we have to.
they
look at it.
should,
Yeah, of course.
because it's data.
Yeah,
on,
I agree.
on risk factors.
The risk of people's lives.
Okay,
for
so
sure.
so nothing is ever zero risk. Yeah, there's a risk that you'll grow a third arm in 10 years because the virus mutates within you.
should the individual not have the right to say, I don't want to take it because that
You don't have the right to contaminate someone else. So if you don't want to get
who
shot,
says that though? But who says that?
it's a social contract in a modern civilization.
I don't have
for public health.
I don't have the right to contaminate someone else. In what do you mean? Like, so what do I do? Stay
it's
home
what-
all day?
Yeah, or it's go to the beach. Yeah, you stay away from other old people who
Some
You know,
beaches were
but
you
closed.
stay away
but-
from people
but-
who are who are immune
But
compromised.
so Neil, so for me, I'm asking you because I want to know how you process this as a guy that's well-read, smart.
I process the data, and the data.
We didn't have enough data though.
No.
We didn't have enough data
At any given moment,
Yeah,
there's data for you to make a decision. At any given moment,
Sure.
the data is constantly getting better and better.
yeah.
All right. So, all right, at any given moment, you say to yourself, okay, what happens to me if I get COVID? There's a chance I'll get long COVID. I'm certainly out for at least a week. And there's a chance I'll be hospitalized, and there's a chance I'll die.
Mm-hmm.
I take the vaccine, it mitigates this, basically entirely removing the chance that I'm going to die, essentially, at my age group. And I will accept the risk that in 5 years I'll grow a third arm. That's the kind of decision making that I make. Now, that's just for me, but on top of that, if my workplace says, we don't want you coming in unless you are vaccinated and you might lose your job, I would say, why? Oh, because you could contaminate someone else, introducing a problem in their own health profile. That's the public contract. That's why workers wash their hands in the restaurant bathrooms by law. Yes, they're required to do so because you don't want poop germs in your dinner that they're preparing. Because our evidence showed that that's one of the greatest places you can spread disease is in a restaurant with a central kitchen. So this is the now you want a world where you can do whatever you want and have it influence other people.
I'm not saying that.
You kind of are.
I'm not saying that though.
This is where Neil deGrasse Tyson just cuts through all the noise with pure logic. PBD comes at him with the classic argument. Shouldn't individuals have the right to make their own choices? And Neil fires back without missing a beat. You don't have the right to put other people at risk. In my opinion, that one line just demolishes the entire personal freedom argument. Because here's the thing. Your choices don't exist in a vacuum. They affect other people, and we already live by this principle everywhere else in society. Neil nails it with perfect examples. We don't let people drive drunk and call it personal freedom. We don't let factories dump toxic waste and claim it's their individual right. Why? Because we understand that some personal choices directly impact other people's safety and well-being. What makes this segment so brilliant is watching Neil think through risk assessment in real time. He's not pretending there's zero uncertainty in any decision. Instead, he's comparing actual probabilities and real-world consequences. This is where a lot of arguments fall apart. People want to obsess over theoretical problems while ignoring concrete data and measurable outcomes. They'll focus on remote possibilities while dismissing immediate observable risks. Neil's approach is rock solid. You look at the best available evidence, weigh the actual probabilities, and make decisions based on data, not fear or wishful thinking. You don't get to hide behind but what if scenarios while ignoring measurable reality. When he points out that some people want a world where you can do whatever you want and have it affect other people, that's the moment of truth. Because that is what some folks are arguing for. And that's not freedom, that's just selfishness with better marketing. This isn't about blind obedience to authority. It's about understanding that we live in a society where our choices impact each other. You can't have it both ways. You can't benefit from living in a community while refusing any responsibility to that same community. That's the difference between liberty and license. Real freedom requires responsibility. So what do you think? If we already accept rules that protect others from invisible threats, like secondhand smoke, or not driving drunk even when you feel fine, why is it suddenly controversial when the threat is a virus? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Stanley versus the World. Please make sure you hit the like button. I think my takeaway from this video, and I wasn't even actually that interested in the COVID part. You would think someone like a Patrick Bet-David, who is some form of a businessman, he would be better at risk assessment. I don't get, I would think sitting down and, planning out, say, a budget or something like that, there are always unknowns. And, you basically do the risk assessment with the data you have. And then anything that could happen in the future, you try and plan as well as you can. But if you don't know what the risk is, and then there is a more immediate risk, you plan for the immediate risk with the data you have about that immediate risk. I don't get why so many people this is just basic, like, risk assessment. You do it. People may not be that cognizant of what they do, but you do this all day. You plan for what you do know and try and mitigate, against what could happen. So I don't get it. I just found this kind of an interesting exercise. So this is going to be somewhat of an abbreviated show. I've got something, a hard stop at right around 8:45 or earlier. It depends on if I run out of articles, and I have one video that I want to show. If that happens, if I get through all that sooner, then I'll end sooner. But around 8:45 is going to be the hard stop. So anyway, let's get to it. First story, DC to see more federal troops as Trump pushes to extend the emergency. And again, there is something I guess maybe I should have shown, but and actually I do have something similar to the point I want to make. Trump is basically I saw a news piece or an opinion piece earlier about, Trump is certainly not the first president to declare emergencies to get around, the slowness of Congress. Trump has done it probably more in the first 7 months of his presidency than pretty much any other president in their whole presidency, including the first Trump administration. But essentially what Trump is doing is if you can declare an emergency, get what you need done, Congress will catch up. That's a perfectly legitimate way of doing it as long as you're following the law. There's a debate whether, declaring emergencies is an abuse of power or not. I guess my answer to that is he's the president. He's or his successors will have to deal with the fallout from bad decisions, if indeed those bad decisions are actually being made. But anyway, let's go ahead and play this, and then I have several articles on this DC situation.
You're listening to DC to see more federal troops as Trump pushes to extend emergency, a news story written by Megan Flynn, Jenny Gathright, Emma Uber, and Aaron Cox, and read by an AI-generated voice. A split screen emerged in the first 48 hours of President Donald Trump's deployment of federal law enforcement and the National Guard onto DC streets. Rhetoric from the president painting the city as a crime-addled wasteland, which DC Mayor Muriel E. Bowser, Democrat, condemned, and on the ground, a surge in federal resources bolstering DC police, which she and the police chief welcomed. The impact of Trump's federal actions came into view Tuesday night, with National Guard troops on the ground and agents from numerous federal agencies roaming DC streets from the National Mall to busy corridors in Columbia Heights. The White House said the overnight operation would soon become a 24/7 affair, with a significantly greater National Guard presence. And Trump said he intended to ask Congress to extend the emergency, allowing him to federalize DC police beyond 30 days. We're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days, Trump said Wednesday, adding that his administration would be pushing a crime bill to use the city as a very positive example. Spokespeople for Bowser and Attorney General Brian Schwab, Democrat, declined to comment. Trump's executive action represents the most extraordinary federal intervention into the city's home rule in decades, coming as violent crime is at 30-year lows following a historic spike in 2023, according to DC police data. So far, top DC officials said, the order was playing out as more of a collaborative partnership, even as they feared that Trump's repeated denigrations of the nation's capital as a dirty city unsafe for residents and visitors could do permanent damage to its image on the national stage. Bowser encapsulated the parallel reactions as she deployed dual messaging in 2 public appearances over the course of 15 hours between Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. Speaking to community leaders on Zoom on Tuesday night, Bowser called Trump's actions an authoritarian push in her firmest condemnation yet, as she began to more forcefully dispute the disparaging characterization of the district that Trump has repeatedly painted. We don't live in a dirty city. We are not 700,000 scumbags and punks. We don't have neighborhoods that should be bulldozed. We have to be clear about our story, Bowser said. She said, we need to do what we can in our space, in our lane, to protect our city and protect our autonomy, to get to the other side of this guy. But appearing on Fox 5 on Wednesday morning, a more tempered Bowser, along with DC Police Chief Pamela A. Smith, said a boost in law enforcement efforts from federal partners could help the city further drive down crime and get more guns off the street, mirroring the kind of pragmatic approach the mayor presiding over the deep blue city has taken for months in the second Trump administration. What we want to do is make sure this federal surge is useful for us, and that's what the chief has been very, very good in working to accomplish, Bowser said. You're talking about 500 additional personnel in the District of Columbia, Smith said. We're down in numbers with our DC police officers, so this enhanced presence is going to impact us in a positive way. DC.
I'll stop it right there and move on to the next story, which is a little bit more illustrative of what's going on here. This is an NBC story. Federal agents in Trump's crime crackdown set up checkpoint in popular DC nightlife area. The increased presence of law enforcement drew a crowd of protesters a day after the National Guard was deployed on city streets. This is pretty interesting. Just a quick look at this little 53 second video. This crowd is mostly white. Kind of surprised me.
Aren't you proud? How many did you catch?
Oh. Well, I don't know what to say to that. I guess the only thing I had to say is, come on, guys, it won't be forever. Says here, steps away from the YMCA Popular Bakery and local pharmacy. A group of law enforcement officers across several agencies turned a busy intersection in a mixed residential commercial area of Washington, D.C. into a police checkpoint Wednesday night as part of President Donald Trump's directive to crack down on crime in the nation's capital. Uniformed officers with the Metropolitan Police Department stood alongside Homeland Security investigations personnel and several plainclothes agents at the checkpoint in what's known as the U Street Corridor, one of the first checkpoints set up since Trump temporarily put D.C. police under federal control and deployed the National Guard. More than 100 protesters soon gathered in the Northwest D.C. neighborhood, heckling law enforcement as they stopped cars approaching the checkpoint and in some cases flagged the vehicles for additional investigation. Some protesters began warning drivers to avoid the checkpoint. So, 100 people protesting. Not sure that is that much to be concerned with. So we talked about Bowser changes her tone on Trump as crackdown ramps up. Seems she's a little bit back and forth, but oh well. Let's see. What is this? What is this? Let's see. Police state. Trump's takeover of D.C. angers residents and sparks backlash. Let's see what this is all about.
These striking images of National Guard members stationed in front of the Washington Monument. Part of what the Atlantic is calling, quote, the president's police state. Trump has federalized the D.C. police, deployed the National Guard along with other federal agencies under the false pretense of fighting crime in the city. This presence includes Customs and Border Patrol, seen here last night parked in front of a D.C. Subway restaurant, or these FBI agents in full tactical gear as a couple appears to enjoy a relaxing date in D.C.'s Navy Yard neighborhood. This isn't exactly Gotham City here. Regardless of what Trump and the right-wing echo chamber
Oh, that's Jason Jones. I know who this guy is.
Already laying the groundwork to extend this authoritarian takeover, despite the fact that his authority is only good for 30 days without proper congressional approval.
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress.
President's authority is never over. President's going to do what he has to do.
I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously.
Unfortunately, Trump is likely right about Republicans in Congress who have shown absolutely no interest in exercising the kinds of checks and balances outlined in the Constitution. But when Trump gets pushback in other parts of his administration, can't handle it very well. In Maryland, the president is currently trying to sue every single federal judge in the state over a deportation-related order. That suit is not going Trump's way, as the judge assigned to the case said he was skeptical. In California, where Trump deployed the National Guard and active duty Marines against the wishes of local and state authorities, litigation is ongoing. But Trump isn't content to limit his strongman posturing to government functions. He's also long been desperate to dominate the culture. Today announcing that he will host the Kennedy Center honors, admitting that unlike previous years, he interfered in the selection of honorees and, quote, turned down plenty. But as Trump forces himself into every aspect of American life, the residents of Washington, D.C. are speaking against him.
In the past 5 years, it's gotten extremely better. I don't hear gunshots. I've never had a break-in.
He's trying to trample over everything that's been put in place that's happened. You can't erase history.
For it to be asserted by others that the federal government wants to take over other cities, that's crazy.
I actually was concerned coming downtown today because I hadn't been downtown since he said that, so I wasn't sure what I would encounter.
D.C. residents weren't afraid before, but Trump's authoritarian actions have made them feel safe in the city now. As The Atlantic put it, he's treating the district as his own personal fiefdom. Joining me now is Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC and founder of the National Action Network, and Alencia Johnson, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign and author of Flip the Tables, the Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. Alencia, I will start with you this evening. You are in and around the Washington, D.C. area. Just tell
By the way, this is kind of a long video, like 11 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it all, if it's all Al Sharpton. I just kind of think that, this isn't the end of the world. To be honest, I honestly don't know why people are, just I just think, just say, hey, this shouldn't be done. And, I don't know that you need to do a whole bunch of videos and create all this Sturm und Drang, but it is what it is.
Tell us a little bit about how the city is reacting to this. How do people feel? Is it affecting traffic? Do people not want to go downtown? What's DC like right now?
Well, listen, a lot of what those residents said does ring true here, but was actually even more clear as a lot of people we know in the DC area are very much politically active. They are advocates, and they are also people, if we look at the demographics and the way that people vote here, they are people who speak out against Donald Trump. And a lot of those folks are Black and brown folks. And so I'm setting them up to say that these people are feeling a bit frightened, a bit like, I actually don't want to stay in a city that is a police state. And so if I don't feel as though my freedom here is safe, I have to consider other options. And maybe I have to decide whether or not I'm going to leave the city. I think there's a real understanding here in the DC area that these pictures we're seeing, they are reminiscent of what we've seen in other countries in history, and that we are repeating itself. And so it will be interesting to see how this continues to play out, as I believe the National Guard just got here today, and they're bringing more troops throughout the rest of the week.
Rev, I've had a lot of people that I've spoke to in the city describe this as basically federal stop and frisk. And, you were in New York, you and the National Action Network fought against stop and frisk when that was sort of the regular way of policing in New York City. What's your perspective on what's happening in D.C. right now? Does it have any actual connection to policing, or is it just authoritarianism?
Well, I think that if it does have something to do with policing, and I have my doubts, but it would be bringing stop and frisk to the district. But several things jump out at me. One is that he named other cities. He named after Washington, he said Los Angeles, Oakland, Chicago, and New York, all of whom have Black mayors. Like there are no cities with high crime rates that have white mayors or white population. So it's the criminalizing of Black people and the criminalizing of Blacks in higher office. This is the same man that sat 3 hours, according to reports, and watched people assault, beat, and threaten cops and law enforcement on January 6th and did nothing. He didn't call the National Guard then. And when he got put back in office, he pardoned them. So some of the most violent people we've seen in Washington, he pardoned. And lastly, I think that this is a lot about let's flood the zone, and people are not talking about Epstein in my base anymore. They're saying he's going after those Black criminals. Well, we want criminals off the street, but the crime rate is going down in Washington and other cities. But even then, we want criminals off the street because the majority of the people that are victims of crimes are us. We don't apologize for criminals, but they're not after criminals. They're looking for a way around the Epstein case and a way to go after these Black mayors.
I want to play this soundbite for you, Alencia, from Jeannie Pirro yesterday, talking about D.C. and crime. Get your thoughts on the other side.
What about preventative? Do you or the president plan to do anything to address the root causes of crime in D.C., such as truancy?
My job is to try to heal the victims and prosecute the criminal. Everybody else can deal with rehabilitating the individual. I honestly am not concerned about why they commit crimes. My concern is if they commit crimes.
Valencia, clearly, these folks are only going to be in the city for 30 days, at least for this particular extent. What does it say that Jeannie Pirro, who's speaking in part for the administration, even though she shouldn't be, is not interested in solving any issues that lead to crime? She really just wants to go in and punish. What does that say about what this administration is really doing?
Well, to piggyback off of what Reverend Sharpton just said, this is about criminalizing Black and brown people, right? So when I think about where I have heard about some of these checkpoints that are already in the city, they are where Black and brown people are. I'm actually seeing videos of people being arrested, and I believe they were detained by ICE. And so, they actually don't care about the root cause of crime. And they actually, I don't think Republicans want to solve crime. They want to continue to have these images that you're showing. They want to be able to act as though they are quote unquote tough on crime, but continue to criminalize Black people in cities that are led by Black mayors. The one thing I want to zoom out and say too is this is giving us, well, I will say it should give Democrats, because a lot of Black people are saying the quiet part out loud, but Democrats should be calling out the racism that is here, the racism that is motivating this right here, as well as the racism that is motivating what's happening in Texas and all of the gerrymandering. It is an attack on Black leadership and autonomy, and it's an attack on Black people in this country. And unfortunately, Donald Trump has filled his administration with Fox News correspondents who don't even know anything about the law or community safety.
Rev, what should other cities, seeing what's happened in Los Angeles, seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, if you were having a conversation with, mayor or soon to be mayors in New York City or Chicago or other cities that are in blue states?
One thing I do have to say, this action that Trump is taking in D.C. Really isn't going to, be a shot over the bow for people who are going to commit crimes, or the people who are committing all these crimes in other cities. It's really more a warning to the city leaders, the mayors and city councils and what have you. So, if I were, say, in Chicago, I'd be thinking, well, you know what, I need to do something, even if it's just kind of like window dressing. If I don't want to be taken over or have tanks rolling down, Main Street, I need to do something that I can clearly point to, when they come for me. When they come for my city, I want to be able to provide a document saying, hey, this is what we've done. These are the projections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It may work, it may not, but the bottom line is forewarned is forearmed. And if New York City in particular is not, doing something to prevent a possible federalizing of a police force or something like that, they need to be making those moves now.
Blue states, because clearly Trump's not going to go to Houston, Texas. What would you advise him to do to prepare or to sort of slow down this kind of takeover should it be coming to a city near you?
I think I would immediately have my police chief come out with the data and say, we do not need you, we do not want you. And I would have my city attorney see if there's a legal way to protect the citizens of my city from being stereotyped. I would throw roadblocks now. I wouldn't wait for it to come, because if we see this president Saturday come out of Alaska with no deal with Putin, he's going to look for another scapegoat, and he'll grab the first Black mayor within his reach.
Valencia, I want to get to you really quick on this. Clearly,
I also want to say that, I fussed over the past couple days about how crime in cities and the inner city is racialized. I want to point out that Al Sharpton is doing the exact same thing from the other side of the fence. Don't approach this crime as racial, approach the crime as crime and what we're going to do about it. I just don't see how racializing it or saying, or preventing, in Al Sharpton's case, preventing the the characterization or the racializing of crime. Preventing it is just as bad as doing it, in my opinion. Concentrate on the crime, concentrate on the plans or the crime statistics or what have you, but don't racialize it. In my opinion, racializing it from an Al Sharpton perspective is just tossing red meat.
Clearly, Trump isn't just happy with sort of his authoritarian rule. He wants to sort of dominate the culture. He's now going to be taking over the Kennedy Center Awards. I want to play some sound from him talking about the fact that he's never been honored. Get your thoughts on the other side.
Since 1978, the Kennedy Center honors have been among the most prestigious awards in the performing arts. I wanted one. I was never able to get one. This year, it's true, actually. I would have taken it if they would have called me. I waited and waited and waited. And I said, the hell with it. I'll become chairman. And I'll give myself an honor. Maybe I'm going to honor, next year we'll honor Trump, okay?
It was 30 years ago this month at another award ceremony where someone got on stage and said, if you don't want someone who's trying to be all up on stage and all up on your videos, maybe you shouldn't be involved with this kind of situation. Trump clearly wants to be all up and involved in everything. What do you think the response should be of people who might get honored by the Kennedy Center after this point? Should they say no to the president? Do you think people should just take their money back? What do you think is the proper cultural response to this kind of takeover?
Well, if you notice, there was a cultural response when he actually shifted the leadership in the Kennedy Center. You had a lot of great leaders such as Shonda Rhimes and folks actually pull out. And what I think you'll see are actually those conservative, right-wing people and artists who actually support Donald Trump starting to be honored. And here's the thing, when people say that culture isn't important, if it wasn't so important, Donald Trump wouldn't be attacking the Kennedy Center and our cultural institutions. And quite frankly, I hate to say this, part of the reason we are still dealing with him is because he knows how to use culture.
That is true. So that is that. Let's move on. I talked about, one of the other. What is starting up there? So this is out in California. The trial over California National Guard deployment concludes. So there'll be a verdict whether it's lawful for Trump to deploy the National Guard out to Los Angeles and the Marines, or whether it's not. So that trial has concluded. And next, we're going to move on to Ukraine and Russia. Trump warns of severe consequences if Russia doesn't stop Ukraine war after Putin meeting. Yeah, right. I believe that when I see it. Says here, that on Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, President Donald Trump spoke at the Kennedy Center in Washington about the upcoming U.S.-Russia summit in Alaska. The summit, scheduled for Friday in Anchorage, aims to discuss ending the war in Ukraine amid criticism from Ukrainian President Zelensky over Ukraine's exclusion in peace talks. I think I have heard that there's Zelensky and Trump are supposed to be talking in Berlin soon. Trump described the summit as a feel-out meeting to assess Putin's intentions and said he hopes to hold a second trilateral meeting with Putin and Zelensky soon after. Trump warned of very severe consequences if Putin refuses to stop the war, while Zelensky rejected Russian demands to withdraw from 30% of Donetsk, reaffirming Ukraine will not cede territory. The summit's outcome could shape future ceasefire efforts, but European leaders stress Ukraine's inclusion is vital, and failure by Russia to engage may prompt increased Western pressure. On who? Russia or the United States? And let's see, what else do we have here? This was interesting. I mentioned this yesterday. Donald Trump reacts to alleged Russia hack into federal court system. And I haven't read this article, so I'm anxious to hear what how Trump reacted.
President Donald Trump reacted to a question on Wednesday regarding evidence that Russia is at least in part responsible for a recent hack of the computer system that manages U.S. federal court documents. The New York Times reported on the investigation Tuesday, citing several people briefed on the breach. The president was asked during a press conference at the Kennedy Center, "There is new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage U.S. federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up to President Vladimir Putin when you see him later in the week." Trump replied, "I guess I could. Are you surprised you know? They hack in, that's what they do. They're good at it, we're good at it. We're actually better at it." Trump continued, "I've heard about it. Why it matters." The Administrative Office of the United States Courts said last week in a news release that it has been experiencing escalated cyber attacks of a sophisticated and persistent nature on its case management system. The majority of documents on the case management system are available to the public, but some documents are sealed due to confidential or proprietary information. The U.S. Courts Office said courts are implementing more rigorous procedures to restrict access to these sensitive documents. Did Russia hack U.S. federal court filing systems? What we know. The New York Times reported that Russia is at least partly responsible for the recent hack of the case management system, citing several people briefed on the breach. It is not clear what entity is responsible, if Russian intelligence is involved, or if other countries were also involved. What is PACER? The Public Access to Court Electronic Records, PACER, service allows the public to access federal court records. Which records were targeted? Some of the searches involved criminal cases in the New York City area and other jurisdictions and cases involving people with Russian and Eastern European surnames, according to the New York Times. What people are saying. The Administrative Office of the United States Courts, in a news release, in tackling cybersecurity threats, the judiciary embraces its security obligations and remains committed to leveraging all available resources to include collaboration with law enforcement, national security and cybersecurity organizations, and other information sharing entities. What happens next? The Administrative Office of the United States Courts said the federal judiciary system is enhancing security to block future attacks and working with courts to mitigate the impact of recent attacks. Do you have a story that Newsweek should be covering? Do you have any questions about this story?
All right.
Contact livenews@newsweek.com. Related articles. Donald Trump scores major...
Well, that's interesting. I doubt that it gets brought up. So let's see. This is kind of covering ground one of the videos covered, but specifically, Trump has named George Strait, Sylvester Stallone, and Kiss for Kennedy Center honors, and says he himself will host the Kennedy Center honors show. We'll definitely have to tune into that. Let's see. It says here Trump fired the Kennedy Center's board of trustees and replaced them with loyalists. Kennedy Center honors have drawn criticism from some artists due to Trump's aggressive takeover of the center's leadership. Well, yeah, of course they want to take over the culture. They are trying to basically counteract what they're saying, 50, 60 years of leftist leanings, and they want their America back to take it back, I guess. So this is something I hadn't heard about. Apparently, Melania Trump demands Hunter Biden retract extremely salacious Epstein comments. So I didn't watch that Hunter Biden interview. So let's see what this is all about. What could Hunter has said, and what is he doing? Does he really want to poke that Trump bear?
Washington, AP. First Lady Melania Trump demanded that Hunter Biden retract comments linking her to sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and threatened to sue if he does not. Trump takes issue with two comments Biden, son of former President Joe Biden, made in an interview this month with British journalist Andrew Callahan. He alleged that Epstein introduced the First Lady to now President Donald Trump. The statements are false, defamatory, and extremely salacious, Melania Trump's lawyer, Alejandro Brito, wrote in a letter to Biden. Biden's remarks were widely disseminated on social media and reported by media outlets around the world, causing the First Lady to suffer overwhelming financial and reputational harm, he wrote. Biden made the Epstein comments during a sprawling interview in which he lashed out at elites and others in the Democratic Party he says undermined his father before he dropped out of last year's presidential campaign. Epstein introduced Melania to Trump. The connections are, so wide and deep, Biden said in one of the comments Trump disputes. Biden attributed the claim to author Michael Wolff, whom Trump disparaged in June as a third-rate reporter. He has accused Wolff of making up stories to sell books. The First Lady's threats echo a favored strategy of her husband, who has aggressively used litigation to go after critics. Public figures like the Trumps face a high bar to succeed in a defamation lawsuit. The president and First Lady have long said they were introduced by Paolo Zampalli, a modeling agent, at a New York Fashion Week party in 1998. The letter is dated August 6th and was first reported Wednesday by Fox News Digital. Abe Lowell, a lawyer who has represented Biden in his criminal cases and to whom Brito's letter is addressed, did not immediately respond to a request for comment late Wednesday. ____.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is a big nothing burger. Won't go far. Let's see. What else do we have here? Oh yeah, this story is awesome. Awesomely horrible. Nursing mother in ICE custody in Minnesota released from detention after justice's ruling. It's like this sort of stuff is why Trump is underwater, even with his signature policy. They literally separated a nursing child from its mother. It's truly amazing.
We really needed her out with her kids. It was going to be a big victory just to get her out of there.
We're following a developing story about a young nursing mother in the Twin Cities who will soon be reunited with her children.
A judge today ruled that she should be released from ICE custody after being held for more than 3 weeks. 26-year-old Antonia Aguilar Maldonado has been detained since July 17th. She came to the United States from El Salvador as a teen and has no criminal history. She is seeking asylum in this country. Caroline Cummings was in court when the judge read the news that she had been hoping for.
Inside a federal courtroom in St. Paul, the crowd erupted into applause after a judge sided with 26-year-old Antonia Aguilar Maldonado and ordered that she be free from ICE custody on bond while her case moves forward. She read her ruling from the bench, a move legal experts say is rare.
We're feeling very relieved that the judge made the right decision in this case.
Her attorneys argued her detention is unlawful. She was arrested July 17th, and later that month, an immigration judge said she could be released on bond. But then ICE filed an automatic stay to keep her in the Kandiyohi County Jail, despite no criminal history, prompting the court challenge. Her attorneys say she suffered emotional and mental distress being apart from her young children and physical harm because she couldn't lactate on a set schedule or in sanitary conditions. She is nursing the youngest of her 2 U.S. citizen children.
He's allergic to other forms of milk, and so unfortunately, this baby has been without his mother's milk now for 26 days, and she wants to get to him right away and start nursing.
Her release expected
That
Wednesday.
poor child is
The courtroom was
practically
packed with her
weaned.
supporters, including her friend Thelma Vitas.
It's just amazing what God can do to get her out where it was not a possibility. That's what it just kept going up and down and up and down. It's been a roller coaster. these 3 weeks.
Vida says she spoke with Aguilar Maldonado after the hearing, and she's overcome with emotion knowing she'll be reunited with her kids. Their church raised money to help pay her bond.
A lot of people can relate to Miss Aguilar Maldonado's situation and to her story. And there are folks here who knew her and folks here who don't know her. And I think it was really beautiful to see so many people, so many Minnesotans showing their support for a young mother who does not need to be detained.
Caroline Cummings, WCCO News.
There'll be a written.
And I read the details of this story. It's just like, what the hell are these people doing? Like, she did come here. I don't know why she wasn't some sort of DACA. She didn't have some sort of DACA protection. But the bottom line is her kids are U.S. citizens. And, I think I've expressed my beliefs, over the past month or so. American citizens should not be harmed by this deportation, mass deportation scheme. And American kids, least of all. You make exceptions. And the woman had no criminal record, had requested asylum. She'd been following the rules. So this is just egregious. And this is why Trump is wanting to gin up some extra congressional districts, because this sort of stuff is just, it's inhumane. Well, how could you keep a suckling child from its mother for 26 days? And I'm like, what the hell? Speaking of redistricting and ginning up extra congressional districts, Governor Newsom says California will redraw its districts to counteract Texas. They're going to have to do a referendum or something. But, it's an overwhelmingly Democratic state. Knowing what Texas has planned or may actually accomplish, I don't see any obstacle to. California has a nonpartisan commission that does its redistricting. I heard somebody say something like California districts were partisan, like drawn in a partisan manner. In theory, it's not. It's a bipartisan, I assume, planning commission that's supposed to be non-political. So I don't know where they were getting their information from. Of course, I think it was News Nation or somewhere like that I heard that. So, partisans always describe, the other side as partisan. So it says here on August 13th, California Governor Gavin Newsom said his state will redraw districts after President Trump missed his response deadline. Prompted by GOP mid-decade tactics, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, at Trump's request, called a special session to redraw U.S. House seats to gain 5 more. In mocking Trump style, Newsom declared in all caps, Donald Taco Trump, as many call him, missed the deadline and vowed to redraw more beautiful maps to end the Trump presidency. Damn, a governor going after the president like that. Later this year, Newsom plans a November special election to bypass California's independent commission and approve new congressional maps. Looking ahead, Newsom warned that the partisan battle risks a national redistricting arms race as Trump faces the prospect of losing control of the House next year, currently a 219 to 212 majority. So, man, this Trump administration is just, causing all kinds of chaos here. So this is more an opinion piece. This is the Washington Examiner, and Joe Concha says the fact checker era cannot end soon enough. Here's why. So basically, Apparently, he wants us to live in a fact-free political environment. Let's see. It says here, it was a telling revelation from now former Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler when he shared a conversation he once had with publisher Will Lewis, in which Lewis asked, what should the Post do to appeal to more Fox News viewers? I felt he was crossing a bit of a business newsroom line when he was asking my advice on how to make the newspaper appeal to a different audience, Kessler shared. As I write in the piece, frankly, the audience of the Washington Post is mostly liberal. I mean, this is based on my anecdotal evidence, based on if I wrote fact checks that gave Pinocchios to Democrats, I got a lot of angry emails. If I gave fact checks that gave Pinocchios to Republicans, I didn't get that many emails. So it was an indication of where his thinking was. And I said it would be a good idea to broaden the readership base of the Washington Post to bring in more conservatives, he continued. But the question is, how do you do that without losing your liberal readers? So because of angry emails from the left, the Washington Post, and by extension, Kessler tried to quell said anger with stories targeting the right, appeasing the left, and fact checks that would keep the email inbox silent. Democracy dies in darkness indeed. Don't even know why that was added there. That's the Washington Post motto. So essentially what he's saying is if you want to draw readership, get rid of fact checks. Let's see. Let me wade through this right quick. See if he can cut to the chase. Fact checkers have been too politically. So now fact checkers are politically biased. Yeah. Okay. Facts aren't supposed to have a bias. The interpretation of facts are. So there's the Washington Examiner basically saying we probably need to just, chuck the fact checks if you want to attract viewers. All right, let's move on. Rural town closed prison into ICE. Rural town to turn closed prison into ICE detention facility despite residents' pushback. That's amazing. So let's listen to this. So we're going to take old defunct prisons. This is in Mason, Tennessee.
Rural town to turn closed prison into ICE detention facility despite resident pushback. The small town of Mason, Tennessee, has approved plans to turn a former prison into a migrant detention facility. CoreCivic, a private company, is set to operate the site following the approval of its contract, the Associated Press reported. The facility, which is now slated for conversion into a migrant detention center, was shuttered in 2021 after then-President Joe Biden ordered the Justice Department to halt the renewal of contracts with private detention facilities. On January 20th, President Donald Trump rescinded Biden's order. The Tuesday night meeting was attended by dozens of protesters, and the scene frequently devolved into shouting matches, according to Fox 13 Memphis. Mason Vice Mayor Reynaldo Given told the outlet that while he voted in favor of CoreCivic, he really had to do some soul-searching and ultimately decided to abstain from the second vote, which concerned ICE's contract. Census data shows that Mason has a population of just 1,337 and has a median household income of just over $47,000. Mason Mayor Eddie Noman told Action News 5, an NBC affiliate, that the town saw this as a business opportunity and that it has nothing to do with anything going on inside the facility. The mayor, who is an Egyptian-American immigrant, also said that he is looking for the best interest of the town, which in his view is to bring back jobs. However, some of the townspeople's ire may be because CoreCivic has faced $44.7 million in fines across multiple prisons, with the latest case happening in February, but it has had problems since 2022, including understaffing violations, the Associated Press reported. The outlet said it had reviewed documents showing that the company spent over $4.4 million to settle 80 lawsuits and out-of-court complaints about mistreatment, which included at least 22 inmate deaths. As the Trump administration pushes to deport illegal immigrants, Some states have moved to partner with the federal government to expand ICE detention facilities. This includes Florida's Alligator Alcatraz, which recently hit a roadblock after a federal judge blocked construction at the facility. Florida Attorney General James Uthmere has vowed to fight back. On August 5th, ICE announced its second state partnership, this time with Indiana, which will use part of the Miami Correctional Center for the Speedway Slammer, which will house migrants. Thanks to Governor Braun for his partnership to help remove the worst of the worst out of our country. If you are in America illegally, you could find yourself in Indiana's Speedway Slammer. Avoid arrest and self-deport now using the CBP Home app. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said in a statement. Fox News Digital reached out to CoreCivic but did not receive a response in time for publication.
Wow. So if you got an old spare prison around, it could be turned into an ICE detention center. Really interesting. All right. So this is a story that 12th Man might be interested in, or he probably knows. Threat over Alaska's capital sees threat over after Alaska's capital sees record glacier related flooding. This interested me mainly because Trump will be in Alaska, and it was just kind of wondering if he planned on doing anything about this. So let's listen to this story. It's just a minute and a half.
And now we go about 600 miles southeast of Anchorage to Juneau, the Alaska state capital, dealing with a major flood threat. A melting glacier pushed the Mendenhall River today to a record high crest of more than 16 feet. But more than 2 miles of newly installed barriers protected neighborhoods from a repeat of the severe flooding of the past 2 years. Katie Kester is the Juneau city manager. And Katie, you've got to be relieved. Water came right up to the top of the flood wall. Take me back to the moments. What was going through your mind as you watched this water rise?
Yeah, I think we were all just very grateful to see the HESCO barriers work. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. For the most part, we have very minimal flooding and avoided a really catastrophic event.
Yeah, thankfully. Just give us an idea of how bad it could have been had it not been for that wall.
Yeah, we could have easily had almost 1,000 structures, most of them residences, some multifamily, flooded. And for many of those homes, it would have been the second year in a row of flooding. Really cold, icy waters, really difficult to mitigate against, does a lot of damage to your home because of that glacial silt. So I think we're all breathing a sigh of relief this afternoon.
Absolutely. But is it getting worse as each year goes by? Is that your experience?
That has been the experience. Not a lot is known about glacial lake outburst floods, this phenomenon that we're experiencing, because they mostly don't affect urban areas. But for the last 3 years, we've had increasingly greater magnitudes of flooding. And so it's something we're working round the clock, not only on this short-term mitigation, but on long-term solutions for our community.
Welcome back. The Trump administration has ordered a review of Smithsonian museums and exhibits. It will focus on 8.
Yeah, talked about that yesterday. Let's move on to New York City. This is the great George F. Will, one of my conservative favorites. He is going to say why Mamdani's socialism on the Hudson would be useful for America. And I imagine that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. George Will, everybody.
You're listening to Why Mamdani's Socialism on the Hudson Would Be Useful for America, an opinion piece written by George F. Will and read by an AI-generated voice. Donald Trump and Zohran Mamdani are similar symptoms, and similarly reasons for guarded optimism. The president and the self-described Democratic Socialist, who is the Democratic nominee to be New York's next mayor, have risen on tides of resentments and are inadvertent educators. Trump is teaching a daily seminar on the founder's wisdom, especially the separation of powers, which Congress, by its self-marginalization, has weakened, thereby emancipating presidents from law and other restraints. Mamdani, if elected, will be similarly instructive regarding elementary economics and the limits of government's competence. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Selected by Vice President Kamala Harris as a running mate, perhaps because he made her seem comparatively substantial, has defined socialism as neighborliness. Probably many of Mamdani's young supporters have a similarly sentimental understanding of it. But always and everywhere, socialism is, first and foremost, about government control of economic life. Originally, socialism favored government ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. Then it advocated government control of the economy's commanding heights. Nowadays, socialism advances its aims by dominating the formerly private sector. Government imposes its preferences, picking winners and losers with regulations, subsidies, import restrictions, and other coercions. Not since the 1930s New Deal, and perhaps not even then, statism is difficult to quantify, has there been a peacetime U.S. administration as, strictly speaking, socialist as today's. In June, the Trump administration essentially nationalized U.S. Steel. MAGA hysteria about Comrade Mamdani threatening to permeate everything with government seems synthetic. Over 4 decades ago, sociologist Daniel Bell postulated capitalism's cultural contradictions. Capitalism's success undermines the virtues, thrift, industriousness, deferral of gratification, that are prerequisites for its continuing success. Socialism's cultural contradiction is that it is parasitic on capitalism, which must produce the wealth that socialism redistributes, until the engine of wealth creation, battered by socialism's redistributive agenda, sputters. Mamdani's agenda includes free, paid for by others, stuff, for example, transportation and childcare, and government bringing its deafness to the running of grocery stores. An even more stringent rent control that will further discourage expanding the inadequate housing supply that is pushing rents higher. Mamdani will be powerless because politics is powerless to assuage a longing that motivates many of his supporters, a hunger for a radical redistribution of status. In 1960, in The Constitution of Liberty, a canonical volume of modern political theory, Friedrich Hayek wrote, "There are few greater dangers to political stability than the existence of an intellectual proletariat who find no outlet for their learning." 65 years later, Hayek's warning needs amending. The danger is the excessive production of expensively schooled, but not remarkably learned persons who are members of a cohort that is of minimal intellectual distinction and is too large to be elite. They are members of a reserve army. Mamdani might recognize this phrase from Karl Marx's Das Kapital, of persons more or less equally prepared to add not much value to the economy. Maybe that ethnic studies major was a mistake. Members of this distinctively modern proletariat, who have chosen to live in one of the nation's most expensive cities, have resentments not unlike those that motivate angry MAGA partisans. They ache for status and other comforts to which they feel entitled. Mamdani as mayor might not be much worse than his principal rivals. Current Mayor Eric Adams has a mediocre record and an aroma of corruption. The recycled Andrew M. Cuomo resigned under various clouds during his 4th term as governor. As mayor, none of the three would probably be as admired as the current police commissioner, Jessica S. Tisch. None of the three would be apt to challenge the teachers' union that controls the nation's largest public school system, which is producing mostly depressing results. Besides, if Mamdani would be marginally worse than those other 2 products of the city's political culture, that might be constructive. He might become America's François Mitterrand. As France's president, Mitterrand set back socialism for several generations. He was elected in 1981 promising a rupture with capitalism and a break with the logic of profitability. He implemented sweeping nationalizations, radically increased welfare benefits, imposed higher taxes on the investing classes, instituted a shorter work week without reduced compensation, etc. In 1982, after the franc had been thrice devalued, he pivoted to socialist rigor, aka austerity. You can't continue to crush with taxes and fees all those people who create wealth in France. Socialism, in a circumscribed but conspicuous jurisdiction, can occasionally be a valuable reminder of toxic political temptations. Hence, Mamdani's usefulness.
I don't know. I find this pretty tepid. He's not really engaging with what democratic socialism is. And the part about, distributing services that are paid for by others, tax money is public money. It's not other people's money. It is public money. So there's some problems. His analysis is very Cold War. but he's got to be close to 80, if not in his 80s. So, my response will be okay, boomer. This article kind of surprised me. I've heard nothing but good things. I thought about Chat GPT, GPT-5, as in Chat GPT-5, but apparently it's got it's not as robust, and I haven't really kept up with AI that much. So this article actually kind of interested me. Apparently, GPT-5 is kind of mediocre.
You're listening to How Altman's Pause Could Knock the AI Industry Off Course, an opinion piece written by James Pethokoukis and read by an AI-generated voice. James Pethokoukis is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and author of The Conservative Futurist. OpenAI's latest chatbot model, GPT-5, is an improved artificial intelligence tool. Faster, more capable, more accurate. But it's not the techno-magic wand some AI optimists hoped for. The leap to superintelligence, the prize behind $400 billion in big tech investment this year, now looks later rather than sooner, if even possible. It's not the end of the world if Silicon Valley adjusts its dreams of miracle cures, super materials, and warp speed growth down towards steady office automation efficiencies for now. Progress is often uneven, with periods of rapid innovation followed by plateaus in which new technology is incorporated. And tempering our immediate hopes for scientific wonders at least means diminishing our fears of rogue machines and mass job extinction. But this slowdown comes at a dangerous time in which investors are running one step ahead of a populist backlash that could shackle AI with regulation before the technology can reach its next breakthrough. There's now substantial risk that the industry's critics turn the public narrative toward its visible harms, whether it's fears of lost jobs, environmental harm, or a broader upheaval of daily life, without enough visible benefits to counteract them. Americans already tell pollsters they are more concerned than excited about AI. Their doom scrolls bring stories of chatbot addiction, celebrity deepfakes, and synthetic voices cloning loved ones to scam the elderly. Older generations worry that younger ones are cheating their way through school. Then there are worrisome economic headlines undermining the case for rapid AI progress with minimal government intervention. One example is the squeeze on entry-level tech positions, created by companies turned to AI for tasks traditionally handled by recent graduates. As summarized by a recent New York Times headline, "Goodbye, $165,000 tech jobs. Student coders seek work at Chipotle." Plenty of readers probably texted that link to their college kids. This disruption is mostly confined to certain tech sectors, but Americans are hearing constant speculation that their white-collar jobs are next, whether or not it's happening anytime soon. As with the China trade shock, limited or exaggerated downsides can dominate perception. Losses in manufacturing towns overshadowed diffuse gains from trade, cheaper goods, greater productivity, new export jobs, and fueled right-wing populism and tariffs. The economy is on shaky ground for reasons unrelated to AI, such as the trade war, and the technology could run into public worries about stagflation. Energy prices are set to rise as consumers compete for power with AI data centers, and the White House is short-sightedly cutting off new projects that might help. Now add the realistic possibility that the AI investment flood, responsible for half of the nation's growth of gross domestic product in the first half of the year, dries up. If the boom busts and drags down the economy, it could merge with job fears into a potent disruption without reward narrative. That would make it far easier for policymakers to impose strict rules, automation taxes, or moratoria, stalling AI not because it failed, but because politics killed it. We can see signs of how this might play out now. Trucking unions are pushing to let local governments block Waymo's expansion. Hollywood unions are pressing for strict limits on AI-written scripts and digital replicas. Organized groups protect their turf, while the public, which might enjoy safer transport or cheaper, more varied entertainment, often has little political voice. Should AI fail to deliver tangible benefits for ordinary voters, politicians may be more inclined to acquiesce to the protectionist entreaties of special interests. This echoes economic history. During the Industrial Revolution, Britain's productivity rose while wages stagnated, a period dubbed Engels's Pause, after Friedrich Engels' grim account of industrial poverty. Early mechanization spoils went mainly to factory owners, while laborers saw their traditional livelihoods disrupted, sparking the infamous Luddite attacks on textile machinery. Britain's leaders pressed ahead, and later generations reaped enormous prosperity. But the long lag in sharing those gains fueled years of social unrest. Today's version could be Altman's pause in honor of OpenAI boss Sam Altman. Tech giants take most early AI profits, while disrupted workers wait for the promised rising tide to lift all boats. And unlike in the 19th century, modern populist leaders might side with the displaced this time, as Donald Trump did with dock workers fighting port automation, or with environmentalists alarmed by data centers' water and energy demands. Anti-disruption sentiment is brewing within both progressive and MAGA coalitions, meaning political blowback could come from multiple directions. Engel's pause ended when gains finally spread. New industries created better-paying jobs, skills improved, and living standards rose. Governments today should focus on accelerating that diffusion. That means keeping a light touch on regulation, scaling workforce training so algorithms complement rather than replace workers, and ensuring there is reliable and affordable energy, including nuclear, to power AI data centers. Permitting reform should make it easier to build. Sensible safeguards against misuse are essential, but fear should not freeze progress. The aim is to turn any Altman's pause into a short lull before a broad, sustained rise in prosperity.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing out of that article is that I guess they were expecting some great leap forward, and it seems that great leap forward into sentience is not not as close on the horizon as some people thought. Which oh well, I'm hearing all these. I watched a video yesterday about a lady who's 63 who just swears by her Chat GPT, and I literally have only used it once, and that was like a couple years ago. I haven't really found a good use for it yet, but we'll see. Now, this next article is a little bit off the beaten path, but I do like food and restaurants and stuff. And this interested me. It says here, meat is back at 11 Madison Avenue Park after 4 vegan years. And I was just curious to know why a vegan restaurant suddenly decided to add fish and meat back to the menu. Apparently, this little blurb here says now the restaurant chef wants to be more welcoming and popular. So apparently, this particular vegan restaurant thinks that we better add some meat to get some more people in the sitting at the tables eating. So we'll listen to this. May not listen to the whole thing, but for those of us who I don't mock vegans, I like vegetables, but it's still interesting why a vegan restaurant would want to backtrack.
Meat is
Must be
back at 11 Madison
you know
Park
what? Actually, the first thing I thought is, hey, this must have something to do with Trump and MAGA. MAGA doesn't like vegetables; it likes meat.
4 vegan years. This article is by Kim Severson and read by an automated voice. 11 Madison Park, the elegant, internationally acclaimed Manhattan restaurant whose climate-minded move to an all-vegan menu 4.5 years ago was hailed as both brilliant and baffling, is bringing back meat. Its chef, Daniel Hum, said in an interview that he wanted to draw more diners to the restaurant, both for financial reasons and as an act of hospitality. I very much believed in the all-in approach, but I didn't realize that we would exclude people, he said. I have some anxiety that people are going to say, oh, he's a hypocrite, but I know that the best way to continue to champion plant-based cooking is to let everyone participate around the table. The restaurant has had varying levels of financial success since introducing the vegan menu, Mr. Hum said, but over the past year has found it increasingly harder to sustain the level of creativity and labor required. Bookings for private events, an essential stream of income, have been particularly sparse. It's hard to get 30 people for a corporate dinner to come to a plant-based restaurant, he said. Wine sales were down too. For wine aficionados, Grand Cru goes with meat, he said. The revamped menu, which begins October 14th, will still offer 7 to 9 courses for $365 and will largely be prepared without animal products. Diners will have a few opportunities along the way to opt for meat or seafood instead of vegetables. That might mean an oyster for a first course, a small serving of lobster, or the dry-aged duck lacquered with lavender honey that has long been singled out by critics as a standout. Mr. Hum is also thinking of adding a chicken dish. Diners who want an all-vegan meal can still have one. Mr. Hum introduced the vegan menu in 2021 when he reopened the restaurant, which had closed for 15 months because of COVID. During that time, he said he fought off bankruptcy and spent his days working with Rethink Food, the nonprofit organization he co-founded, to serve 1 million free meals to medical workers and poor New Yorkers. Mr. Hum says he saw that the global food system was fragile and riddled with social inequalities. He explored the growing genre of books and documentaries about the perils of a fast-changing climate and came to consider luxury, less about ingredients like foie gras and caviar, and more about carefully sourcing food and preparing it with exceptional skill and creativity. "We couldn't go back to doing what we did before," he told the New York Times when he announced the vegan menu. Skeptics doubted that diners would pay hundreds of dollars for vegetables and fruit, no matter how artfully prepared. Others dismissed it as another high-end stunt from a chef who had taken the restaurant through a series of different menus since he took over in 2006, including one that required waiters to perform card tricks. But many people considered the move an important step in efforts to minimize the consequences of global warming by changing how animals are raised and consumed. If a chef like Mr. Hum, who landed at the top of the 2017 list of the world's 50 best restaurants, believed in serving only plants, the thinking went, menus at more mainstream restaurants would begin to reflect concern for the welfare of animals and the climate. The meat-free menu met with mixed reviews. Although the restaurant retained the 3 stars that Michelin first awarded it in 2012, other critics were not as impressed. Pete Wells, then the Times' restaurant critic, described vegetable dishes that tasted harsh, out of balance, or, in one case, like Lemon Pledge. "Some are so obviously standing in for meat or fish," he wrote, "that you almost feel sorry for them." When Mr. Hum announced the new meat-inclusive menu on his social media feeds Wednesday, the response from people who eat only a vegan diet was swift. "Yesterday, you were the owner of the world's most famous vegan restaurant. An inspiration. Somewhere vegans could aspire to visit for special birthdays and special occasions." Quote. One person wrote on his Instagram page, "Today, you are the owner of just another restaurant. I fell for your act. I thought you cared. You didn't." Several fans applauded the move. One wrote, "As the world is complicated, you are brave to make the choice." Some commenters debated whether vegan cooking was still popular at restaurants. The French chef Alain Pessard announced in July that, with exception of honey, he was dropping animal products from the menu at his 3 Michelin-star restaurant Arpège. Others contended that pitting veganism against meat eating was a false dichotomy, and that the more important issue was supporting healthy and sustainable forms of producing food. Mr. Hum said his move back to meat comes after months of contemplation that started in earnest early this year during a research trip to Greece. He and some colleagues traveled into the mountains to watch a shepherd slaughter a goat. "It's very moving and there's such respect," he said. "If you had seen the whole cycle, of course you would never waste a bite of this." He spent the next several months thinking about that and digesting comments from diners like, "I wish I could bring my husband, but he would never come." He pondered the meaning of hospitality, he said, and realized that the restaurant's vegan dogma had become exclusionary. In July, he decided it was time to give diners more choices and add meat back to the menu. "To me, that is the most contemporary version of a restaurant," he said. "We offer a choice, but where our foundation continues to be plant-based." Even if a diner chooses all the meat or seafood dishes on the menu, he said, most of the meal will still be plant-based. When people come in and maybe they had one fish or a lobster, or the duck, but they also had 80% vegetable dishes. He said. They might even like the vegetable dishes more. Follow New York Times Cooking on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Pinterest. Get regular updates from New York Times Cooking with recipe suggestions, cooking tips, and shopping advice.
I don't know. It just seems weird to me that you would just switch over to a vegan restaurant after reopening from COVID. That is, I guess that's the time to make a bold choice, but I don't know that I'd have had the balls to do it, especially if you weren't vegan before COVID. So, anyway, this, I actually watched the whole thing. This is a story in CKJ3. Are you still in the audience? You have to see this. Please tell me that you are. You will never see this story on the White Shade network news. I just do not know. See, and I don't want to get knee deep into this, but this racializing crime, just these people are just so fucking blind. But this is you got to see this video. CK, I hope you're in the audience. You're gonna love this.
We're back here for you on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us. Next up, let's go out to Polk County, Florida. Sheriff Grady Judd giving an update. Over the weekend, there was a party that got out of hand, and now police saying that it turned into a riot, and they have video from that party that went terribly wrong really fast. Let's bring it to you here on Live Now from Fox.
Problem that we have done everything in the world we could to correct. We started out with education. In addition to education, we tried to be friendly. We tried to coach. We tried to counsel. We pled. We begged. We did everything we could in order to get people to comply on the lakes, on the chain of lakes, and specifically Lake Winterset, and even more specifically in the area they call the Point. We realize you go out on the boat to have fun. We realize you go out to be with your family. But there's a few people who do things that's so outrageous that it shocks the community. And let me give you some examples of conduct that we saw prior to just this weekend. And at one point in time, I did a video or a piece and showed a picture of someone defecating in someone's yard. And I got all of this, but they were in the bushes and all that. You're in somebody's backyard going to the bathroom. And then we've got these pictures. Okay? Now, I don't know if he's saying, hey, let me help you out of the tree. The private property sign, I guess they thought that was only for the bird. Maybe you should say, hello, Mom, what do you think? Or this is up close and personal. Or what about this? What are you doing? You playing hide and seek? That's interesting. Or maybe she's saying, do you need a beer? But she's whispering it to him real quiet like. You know what I'm saying? So this conduct is happening in the middle of the afternoon in people's backyards where they're trespassing, or on a boat where she's standing in the water adjacent to people's homes, where there are people who are trying to enjoy their own life, where there are people with children, and this kind of sexual activity is happening in the public. So we've tried to work with people, but the game's over. And I'll tell you why the game's over. I want to show you this sign. What we're going to talk about today happened on a lot where we have at least 15 of these signs. It's in a area of a vacant lot where they pull up to, and instead of staying in the water, where there's a loophole, as long as their feet are in the water, they can be at your back door. But then they get up onto people's property. You see, this sign says, by order of the sheriff. This is not a suggestion. So a week ago, we received a 911 call where there were a group of individuals who wants to be, again, being raucous and out of control and fighting. By the time the deputies arrived, they had fled. We chased down one boat, and there were two people there that said, hey, yeah, a couple of guys had a fight, but it's broken up and it's cool, and they wouldn't cooperate. But our Marine Patrol folks, who are the very best, got into this investigation because they created a significant disturbance once again. So I want to tell everyone, so mom and dad and friends can be very impressed. Here's who we've arrested. Now, let me go over this for you. These groups of people were at one time friends. And apparently back in March, there's a local bar called the El Rodeo Bar where a fight occurred and there were some criminal charges filed. Well, some of the group didn't like the fact that there were criminal charges filed, and we're looking into tampering with evidence. But now, a week ago, at this disturbance, these folks kind of ended up at the point. And it started with talking to each other and screaming and hollering at each other. And then they got to fighting up on the land. Oh, they were fighting. If you can see where part of the scrum occurred, there's one guy laying on the ground knocked out between two of our no trespassing signs. So our investigation took us to arrest them. Now we have Tim Gooding here. He's our sucker puncher. You know, he'll run up behind you and knock you out cold. He knocked another person out into the water. In addition to that, this Peyton Ely, who's 19, we charged him by affidavit a couple of months ago when he called up Uber Eats, ordered some beer, and walked through people's yard out to the road to get the beer to go back to the lake. Listen to me, folks. This is long past a joking matter. We've coached, we've pled, we've begged, and once again, you see what we got. A bunch of kids have gone to jail. These guys are 23, 19, 21. Richard's 40. He's old, he's way old enough to know better. 22, 21, 21, and 17. Gavin Gooding is Tim Gooding's juvenile brother. So he picked up, in addition to riot, disorderly conduct, affray, he got a contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Nate Land, and once again, all these folks were friends at one time. The bottom line to this is you go, oh, what's the big deal? I want you to think about this. I want you to think that you go home this afternoon or this weekend, and you're in your backyard, and these folks, whether they're in boats or vehicles, pull up to the edge of your property, put on their music to blast, using the F word with your children there, and that goes on all afternoon. And then they roll out in a big mob into your yard and fight. And you know, if you're not fighting, you can do other things that start with an F, like this in the yard. We're over it. Now, I'm going to give you one last warning. Our Marine Patrol people are going to be out there. Some you're going to see, some you're not going to see. But write this down in your little book. We're going to put people in jail this weekend for conduct that we previously tried to warn you about. So go home and get your bond money together right now. You can carry it in your pocket. It'll help you get out of jail quicker. We're going to take you to jail, but also bring enough money, because we're going to tow your truck. We're going to tow your car. We're going to tow your wave runners. We're going to lock y'all up until you figure out that you can't misbehave in the community, that you can't fight, that you can't knock people unconscious. It's over, folks. It's over. You've taken advantage of our good nature of trying to allow people to enjoy the waterway, because I think it's important that you're with your family on the water doing family things. But when a group of these knuckleheads want to disrupt everyone else using the lake, that's not happening. Now, if you have 3 brain cells, you can read a no trespassing sign. When it says by order of the sheriff, that isn't a suggestion. And by the way, I want you to know this. If you want to go knuckle busting and create permanent brain injuries, or the ability to have a permanent brain injury, you can knuckle bust, you can create brain injuries to each other, but you have to do it on your own property without creating a disturbance to your neighbors. It's over, folks. I think I've said that enough. So the conduct is reprehensible, and obviously you don't believe us when we try to warn you. So you have unleashed the teeth of the dog. And now we're going to start biting you, just like we bit these guys here. Okay? Any questions? Okay, now well, let me show you the video. You may have more questions. Here's the video. Oh, there's the first one. Damn. Knocks him out into the water.
There's a child there on the boat.
There's lots of children around. One on the boat, watching all of that nonsense. At the end of the day, you're going to jail this weekend, just like these guys did. We're going to load you up.
Sheriff, your office recommended the county set up a swim area, vessel exclusion zone.
Yeah, I'll stop it there. And yeah, I'm just like, folks, I don't know what to say, except you will never see it. You'll never see what happens outside of the inner city, apparently. Anybody who thinks that this sort of violent crime. I mean, they're copulating on other people's property. This isn't even their property. They are just all over people's properties. You saw that little girl on the boat, the little girl. I mean, she didn't even look like she was a teenager. This stuff is going on all over the place. And granted, it's Florida. We all know about the Florida man syndrome. But the bottom line, I guess what I'm trying to say is anybody who wants to just concentrate and basically say that violent crime only happens in the inner city, I'm just going to judge you of low moral character. It is truly amazing what gets concentrated on and what kind of gets oh, hey, it's okay. There are no bullets involved. I find it just amazing. But that's race in America. I don't generally even expect better, but I'll probably show this video again at some point. So let's see, where are we? We're at 7:54. Everybody, please make sure you hit the like button, especially if you're in the John Galt chat. We're a little low on the likes. I've got one more video, and then that will be the last of the morning because I gotta run and prepare to head on into Atlanta. So let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and just show this one. This is a political thing that I will show. I'm going to have to restart it. This is Matt Lewis and Bill Scher. Just basically, they haven't done it very regularly over the summer, but usually they do a regular weekly kind of political news roundup. And this is worth watching.
Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Wednesday, August 13th. Coming up on 7 months. 7 months out of 48 of his presidential term. How you feeling?
It only feels like, I don't know, 80 months so far. So we're hanging in there. It's a lot of stuff going on, keeping us busy. Never a dull moment. And I guess, look, mission accomplished. I think he has moved past the Epstein scandal. Now, I have argued that this did some damage, and but that doesn't mean that it's gonna his presidency is gonna come to a screeching halt. And I do think certainly the topic of conversation has shifted. It's no longer dominating headlines.
Well, that's true. And obviously, Trump has purposefully done things, as he often does. It's one crazy thing after another. So your attention gets distracted. I'm not going to say it's the only reason why he does things, but I think it is in the mix. But when Congress comes back in September, are we going to, the discharge petition in the House is still lingering out there. So I do think this comes back. He hasn't put it to rest where nobody cares anymore. There's still the unanswered question: why can't you just do this when you said you were going to do it? And if you're not doing it, why is that? So I don't think I agree. It's a bit back burner for the moment, but I still think there's potential for it to return.
Yeah, look, I think Trump made a few promises. He said he was going to end the Russia-Ukraine war on day one. Obviously, that didn't happen. Obviously, that is Trump is meeting with Putin in Alaska this week to potentially try to resolve that. It doesn't look promising to me. Trump promised to bring down grocery prices and stop inflation day one. That hasn't happened. I think that's the biggest problem that Trump is going to have long term is the economy. Tariffs could obviously exacerbate this problem, inflation. But I do think the other promise, Bill, was to release the Epstein file, and he hasn't done that. And that is a broken promise that I think does hit a certain segment of his base who deeply cares about it. So it's not over, but he's done so many other crazy things that I guess we have to move on, and everyone else has moved on as well.
Well, those things combined. I mean, if the economy was gangbusters, everything else would be secondary. We're still very anxious about tariffs. There's been a certain amount of commentary. Well, it hasn't been as bad as we thought. But one, prices certainly haven't come down on Trump's watch, which he promised would happen. And we know that businesses have been trying to absorb the cost as much as they can.
Yes.
We know that both the New York Times and CNN has done monthly tables of how much more tariff revenue we're collecting. It's shot up, more than triple of where we were before he came into office on a monthly basis. We peaked in July at about 30 billion, and if you haven't seen that, if you haven't seen like your grocery bill jack up that much, or your appliances, your electronics, or what have you, it's because the businesses have been trying to hold the line.
Yeah.
But they're saying is we can't keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, a week and a half ago? More tariffs. It's not like
I heard Andrew Ross Sorkin was on, I think it was the Daily podcast, talking about this point. And apparently, like, companies, number one, they're afraid to raise prices because if you're the first mover at raising prices, you could lose your clientele kind of permanently. Even if other people subsequently raise prices, the first mover will be punished. The other problem is that the first mover could be punished by Donald Trump specifically. Like he could call you out and attack you publicly, which could have all sorts of ramifications as well. So apparently companies are trying to eat some of these costs without passing them along. But I got to tell you, totally anecdotal, right? I remember David Brooks a year or two ago got into some he got dragged a little bit on Twitter for tweeting out a receipt from like LaGuardia, buying a cheeseburger or something at LaGuardia Airport, along with some very expensive booze. But I will tell you, Bill, I am feeling it. I am seeing it. I mean, my wife this past week bought 3 chicken salad sandwiches at a deli in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Okay. This isn't DC. It's not New York. It's in a college town, granted, but it's in West Virginia. No drinks, no alcohol. 3 chicken salad sandwiches with side greens. Bill, do you want to take a guess what the going rate is for 3 chicken salad sandwiches at a deli in Shepherdstown, West Virginia is?
So I'm going to guess. I mean, I'm going to guess high, of course.
It's got to be. I wouldn't ask the question if it wasn't ridiculous, right?
And is it fair to say Shepherdstown is a bit more upscale than the average West Virginia town?
Yes. So it's a college town, and it's in the Eastern Panhandle, which is close to Virginia. But it's still West Virginia. It's not New York. It's not DC. It's not LA.
So 3 chicken salad sandwiches, just sandwiches.
No drinks, no alcohol. They do come with like a side salad.
I'm going to say 18 each.
Pretty close. I'm not great at math, but it was a total of $48.
Okay, so 48 for 3 would be 16.
So, yeah, 40. So I remember, this happens all the time now. Like, I'll pick up my kids from somewhere and they'll be like, hey, do you mind if we just swing by a Panera or Chick-fil-A? And a few years ago, I would have been like, why not? It's going to cost us like 15 or 20 bucks, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm coming away with like $75 at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I'm already, and I know this didn't just happen. This has been accumulating over the last decade, but it is getting ridiculous out there, Bill.
Now, I want to be a little fair here, because I bet when you talk about like fast food type costs, I assume some of that is for the legitimate reason where there was a lot of activism around raising the minimum wage for fast food workers and minimum wage generally. I don't know. I think West Virginia is still on the low side for minimum wage, so maybe it doesn't apply there. But we shouldn't be having cheap food on the backs of people earning wages that you can't live on. So I probably wouldn't attribute all of that to Donald Trump. I know around where I am, like the McDonald's is more expensive than what it used to be, and that's because of the labor costs. But more broadly, grocery stores and such, you can't put that all on minimum wage, I would imagine.
It used to be so. I remember I used to be a big fan of going out to lunch as opposed to dinner, and you used to be able to like go to lunch. Like, this will date me, Bill. This will make me seem super old. But when I started working at the Leadership Institute in Arlington, Virginia, there was a place called Faccia Luna. You could get 2 slices of pizza, a side salad, and an iced tea for $4.95. That was their lunch special. And these were big slices of I don't want to call it gourmet pizza, but this isn't like Domino's or something. It was a nice place. I think they closed down. I think it was up to like $25. Now granted, time has passed, this happens. It's like old guy shakes fist at cloud or whatever. But things are getting expensive. And I've definitely noticed it in recent years. And look, I wouldn't even be bitching about it, except for the fact that this is probably the reason Joe Biden lost. It seemed people thought it was a big deal a few years ago. Will they continue to think it's a big deal, or is it because Trump is president now? It doesn't matter as long as those trans athletes are, are not invading my soccer.
If you're a diehard MAGA, you're not going to care, and your complaint was disingenuous. But I think for the average voter, you do care, and you were promised a break, and you didn't get it. Now, here's one thing that I have no idea if this is tariff related or not. This is just anecdotal me griping. So I was gonna make some Mexican street corn. When you make a Mexican street corn, you need cojita cheese, and I wanted to get the fresh block of cheese, and there at the grocery stores near me, I've gotten it before. I have 2 main supermarkets near where I live, and I could not find a block of that in either store this weekend. I could find some pre-graded, which I did use, so I did survive. My first world problem was solved, but I thought it was strange that an item that I normally would get, presumably imported from Mexico, I couldn't get, and I wonder if that was tariff related.
I don't know. Let me just take this personal. It's not about availability, but back to me complaining about prices, Bill. I've got 2 sons. My oldest boy is 14. He's like 6'1", and I'm guessing he weighs, 180, something like that. My other kid is 12, and he's like 5'1", and he's a little chunkier. These kids put away some groceries. And I mean, you want to talk about this whole thing about not having kids, this crisis of the birth dearth. We're already, as a society, not reproducing at levels that would, sustain us. I don't know if we could, I don't know how we could afford a lot of kids. And imagine living in like New York City or Washington, D.C. Is it any wonder that people are choosing to have 1 kid or maybe none? The cost is starting to get really out of control.
Well, the problem in Washington, D.C., Matt, is not the cost of groceries. It's that you can't walk down the street without bullets flying past your head. Everybody knows it's a war zone.
Right. Well, good segue, Bill. Let's talk about this. Bill, of course, is talking about the fact that this week, after the tragic beating of a guy named Big Balls, a former Doge staffer, apparently that was the impetus for this. That Donald Trump has announced that he's going to send in, I think it's the National Guard, as well as federalizing the metropolitan.
He's running FBI agents.
And the FBI, and then federalizing the Metropolitan Police Department. And the one, the question is, A, is crime really that bad in DC to warrant this? And B, what are Trump's motives? Like, does he really care about crime in DC, or is this some sort of power play? But I have thoughts, Bill. But what's your take?
Well, I just wrote about this in the Washington Monthly, so feel free to check that out. You might be familiar with the phrase "facts don't care about your feelings."
Yes, Ben Shapiro, right?
I don't know if he coined it or if he popularized it, but he definitely, he's associated with him. It's certainly something that conservatives say all the time, or had said all the time. And now, when you hear Democrats and journalists say, you know what, crime is at a 30-year low in D.C. Who cares about what the statistics are? How does it feel? Do you feel safe in D.C.? That's what matters here. And I heard that, and I'm just from diehard conservative types. I heard that from Alex Thompson from Axios on CNN. I heard from Joe Scarborough on MSNBC. He was a conservative Republican. He's got to come back. I know you guys know each other, but Scarborough at least was saying, I'm not saying we should bring in the military.
Yeah,
but he was kind of scolding Democrats, saying, "Yeah, you shouldn't be getting all bent out of shape about the stats. You should talk about the vibe." And one thing I've heard come out of some conservatives, actually, I went to Ben Shapiro's site, the Daily Wire. Shapiro himself seems to be off on vacay, but one of his people was making the argument that Trump has the right to do this. This is not like other cities.
Right.
And there is truth to that. There is a law, in the Home Rule Act that largely gives D.C. a moral autonomy, does give the president the authority to declare an emergency and to take over the Metropolitan Police Department for 30 days. Then after that has to be something that Congress passes. So it is a power that he has, but I think it's accurate to say if you're using phony information to claim there's an emergency when there is not one, then you are abusing that power.
Trump does that all the time. This is Trump's MO. He calls things emergencies that are not emergencies. He did that in his first term as it pertains to the wall, as I recall.
Yes, that's what authoritarians do. Now, I think it is fair to use that language, even if this isn't technically illegal or technically unconstitutional, because you do have this law. But if you're abusing power, if you're using the letter of the law and going far removed from the spirit of the law to grab power for yourself when you do not need to, that is what authoritarians do. And we've already seen Trump say he's not going to end with D.C. They want to do this in other cities, even though he doesn't have those laws to exercise that authority. But he's trying to justify the legitimacy of doing that. Well, if things are out of control and Democrat mayors aren't going to take care of it, then I'm going to take care of it. And look, I think most of the media is doing a good job here, so I'm not trying to paint a broad brush. The reason why I know that the statistics are what they are is that reporters told me. But within the pundit class, you're hearing more of this, don't care about the stats business. Your job as someone in the media is to let people know what the accurate information is, and then they can draw their own conclusions from that. Don't just presume they have a feeling. And honestly, based on what? Because I looked at a recent polling from YouGov. They just last week asked, here are 15 issues. What's your most important issue? Crime was ranked 12 out of 15, with 2% saying it's the most important issue. That's nationally. And there was a snap poll that YouGov did in DC. Snap poll did. There's still a national poll. Do the youth support what Trump's doing in DC? Plurality of 47% said no. Support was only 34%. And then the Washington Post was just person on the street interviews, and their take was that things aren't out of control. Crime might be an issue, but not justifying federalization. This is totally excessive and extreme, and the support isn't there. So if you're even going to say there's a vibe out there, base it on something, for Pete's sake, because I'm not seeing any anecdotal or quantitative evidence that is even the case.
So I talked to Charles Fain Lehman yesterday, who's kind of a center-right, but I think a straight shooter and an honest broker at the Manhattan Institute. And he tells me that, so first of all, the data that we're looking at, may or may not be flawed. It could be that people just have given up reporting things like shoplifting, because what's the point? The police aren't going to do anything. Nobody's going to prosecute the shoplifter. So that's one possible variable. But he also says, putting this in context, Washington, D.C., while it's true, the stats that you have cited, that the crime rate has actually fallen in recent years in Washington, D.C., it's actually much more dangerous than New York City or even Philadelphia. It's actually Washington, D.C.'s violent crime is really on par with like a Detroit or a Memphis, something like that. So I think two things can be true. It can be true that Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is more dangerous than it ought to be, and that Donald Trump is exploiting this moment has sort of ulterior motives for exploiting it. That's kind of where I come down on this. If the motives were pure, because Washington, D.C. is the nearest major city to me, I would love for there to be increased policing and for the crime rate to fall, and for there to be more cops on the street. And as Charles Fain Lehman told me, statistically speaking, the way to solve crime is to really target. There's like maybe 500 people in the nation's capital who are responsible for like 60 or 70% of the crime. And this is basically two wards or a couple of neighborhoods where the bulk of this crime is happening. And so if you were to concentrate police in those areas, you could really disproportionately bring down crime. And of course, that could come with a backlash of folks saying, this is targeted toward the African-American community, civil rights, problems. But anyway, my concern is Donald Trump. Like, where does this stop? And this is a guy who tried to basically stay in office an additional term. It'd be, if I were an authoritarian who had sinister ambitions, bringing the nation's capital and the police department to heel and under my control would probably be somewhere on my checklist.
I want to make one other point about the data question before I get more broad. So there's a great Substack newsletter done by Jeff Asher called I think it's Jeffalytics. It's really, really deep in the weeds on crime data, and has a recent post about Washington, D.C. And talks about some of the nuances and some of the knowns and the unknowns, and acknowledges certain uncertainties, but also talks about the longer trends, not just this year, but going back, 20 years or so. And he said, MPDC's public data and the data report of the FBI mostly agreed about 2023. 23 there's a spike. So 39% increase in violent crime versus 41% respectively, and those two, this is Metropolitan Police versus FBI. The data for 2024 and most likely 2025 is more problematic, though, given just how sharply the decline in MPDC's public data differs from the decline reported by DC to the FBI. It's not unusual for MPDC's publicly available data to suggest a larger drop in violent crime than is reported to the FBI, probably due to the former measuring incidents versus the latter measuring victims. But the percent changes are usually reasonably close. For 2024, however, the FBI's drop shows a 9% drop, while MPDC's public data shows a 35% drop. We don't have 2025 data from the FBI to know for sure that the department's 26% decline from 24 is an overstatement, but I'd be very surprised if it was accurate. There's still tons of evidence pointing to declining violent crime in DC in 2025, especially gun violence. We trust the MPDC's murder and carjacking figures, with both show sizable declines in 2025, especially compared to 2023. There's also separate data from ShotSpotter showing a 16% drop in alerts to the first half of 2025 compared to the first half of 2024, and a 45% drop relative to the first half of 2023. So that's just one excerpt there. And you could say, I mean, we had a spike in 2023, it came down, don't pat yourself on the back because you have a decline from a spike. But even still, you go back farther, 20 years, you're still down from where you were. And if you want to go from that, well, I still don't trust this data for this reason or for that reason. Okay, what data do you trust? Where is it coming from? You can't take one assault and extrapolate from that and to declare an emergency necessitating National Guard, FBI, and possibly even the military, which he hasn't quite done yet, but is threatened. That doesn't add up.
He doesn't. I mean, data. When data is in his favor, he likes data. When it's against, just remember the whole BLS story. I mean, there's so many parallels here of Trump's MO. The jobs report numbers he didn't like, so obviously he had to fire the administrator and claim the numbers were bogus or flawed. And of course, they're never perfect, but they're never perfect. They haven't been. They weren't perfect when
There's
Biden
always
was
been
president.
revisions. Like they made a big deal about there being revisions, but that's always the case. You get more as you get more data. You're asking people to give you immediate jobs numbers.
Yeah.
And so you give an immediate number. It's imprecise. Everybody knows there was revisions, and so the fact that the revisions later just means like, hey, you didn't rest on your laurels. As you got more information, you refined your numbers. And I mean, this is where it's both authoritarian and amateur hour. If you want to, manufacture favorable numbers for yourself, don't fire the chair the day of the bad number, because that's just transparent. Like, wait a few months, come up with some phony reason, whatever,
Yeah, but I think this is also telling of Trump's MO, which is, you're right. If your goal were to kind of quietly do this, you could accomplish what he wanted to accomplish more subtly and clandestine. But what he wants to do is also send a message to anyone else in the future who might be giving him bad numbers to maybe goose the numbers a little bit. Maybe don't report bad numbers. Maybe only report good numbers. It's sort of similar to what ICE is doing, right? You could do a lot of deportations very quietly. They don't want that. They want it to be public. They want a spectacle because for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe it scares other people and gets them in line, even people in the media or academia. It scares them just the sight of this, but also it's part of the plan for self-deportation. If you're an immigrant, maybe you just don't come here, or maybe you get the hell out on your own because you don't want to be sent to El Salvador. So Trump, you're right. I mean, Trump could accomplish a lot of what he wants to accomplish if he did it sort of undercover, but like he wants to do this very publicly. And look, as it pertains to Washington, D.C., the same thing, right? You could imagine that a president who prioritizes being a uniter and being a healer, who wants to bring the country together, giving a speech where he says, we are going to surge forces in Washington, D.C. to help support the local police department. And I've spoken to, Mayor Bowser, and we yada, yada, yada. But I want everyone to rest assured this is a temporary basis. We'll be there just 30 days. And this only applies to Washington, D.C., because there's a special relationship. This is the nation's capital. We have a responsibility to provide. You could calm people, but Trump doesn't want to do that, right? For a variety of reasons. He wants to keep his options open. And even if he has no plans to, let's say, go back into L.A., it's probably good if people think he might. From his standpoint,
you phrased that. At one point you were talking about the deportations. You gave the rationale as being policy oriented, because this would be a way to induce self-deportation, which would improve the numbers. And I'm sure they tell themselves that sort of thing. But and this is just me, being speculative. I don't really believe they have deep interest in policy outcomes. I think Trump has a narcissistic psychological interest in exercising power for power's sake. And I mean, we talk about Trump does things that other people wouldn't do, and sometimes that's carried favorably. That he's more effective. He doesn't get bogged down in rules and norms and public opinion, and he's without restraint. There's a reason why other people have these restraints on them, because they care about what happens the next day. They care about the actual policy outcome. They care about how this might play electorally for, if not themselves, their allies, their party. how their legacy is going to look. Everything I see about Trump is pure impulse. What makes sense? What allows him to be the dominant force in a news cycle? And perhaps I'm being colored here by how much I watch Criminal Minds now, because I watch Criminal Minds with my daughter almost every night, and they often talk about the unsubs as wanting to exert power, needing a sense of release, sexual or non-sexual, in the exercising of power and dominion over somebody else. I think Trump kind of gets off on exercising power for power's sake. And it also feeds the political electoral framing. If there was calm in the land, what do you need him there for? You want to say America's great again, everything's gangbusters, but if everything was really that tranquil and lovely, why does he have to be there? He needs the foil. He needs the evil Democratic mayor. He needs the chaos in a city, which supposedly he's supposed to rectify, but if it's not being rectified, it's someone else's fault and not his, and he's the one who's going to take care of it. So he has to manufacture the chaos so he can address the chaos. And whether it actually gets solved is irrelevant. He needs the spectacle at all times. Prices, we're being taken to the woodshed, global trade, immigrants everywhere, crime in the streets. It's all excuses to exercise power for power's sake.
It's not as, there was a blitzkrieg coming out of the inauguration with these executive orders, and my head was spinning. So we're not quite at that level of a hurry up offense, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think that there's a philosophy that says you're always on offense, and comity and calmness is bad. So let's flood the zone, kind of thing. But also you're never satisfied. And so that brings us to the other topic we should probably talk about. It's a little, it's ongoing, but you and I haven't discussed it yet, which is the gerrymandering that's taking place down, in Texas. And I think that's indicative of some of what we've already been talking about, which is, picking a fight, trying to, kind of exploit things. You could just leave that alone. It doesn't, most presidents, I don't think, would go there. But it's just this offense and picking fights. And sometimes, sometimes it works out. Like, I think it's possible Republicans could pick up a few House seats by doing this, but at the end of the day, it might even just be a wash. It might be a lot of expended energy for nothing. But what do you think?
Well, I'm generally in that place, and I've written about this too at the Washington Monthly. If you were a reality-based figure, often presidents get in for the first 2 years and they realize, this is my time. We got to pedal the metal, do some things that maybe come with political risk, but we get points on the board. We know there's going to be a pendulum swing in the midterms, and so here's our chance to push hard. And you do it knowing, I'm going to do this, and chances are I might lose the House or the Senate. I might lose it anyway. And so, but I'm doing it because I think it's really important to get these policies on the books. And I think it's going to be good for the country in the long run. And it's okay if I take a political hit in the short run for it. That's pretty common amongst most presidencies. And they don't take a dive on the midterm, but they kind of know, it's probably not going to work out for me. Or at least I'm going to accept that as a possible consequence. And Trump is not capable of thinking, long term. And again, in one sense, if you're worried about the midterms, if you're worried about having a Democratic House issuing a lot of subpoenas, maybe you wouldn't do all those policies. Maybe you'd go a little easier on the agenda maybe you wouldn't do global tariffs that would disrupt the economy. But he made those choices because it does the 2 steps ahead. And now he wants to do this with the Texas redistricting. And so a couple of data points here. So the average loss in seats for the out party, so the average loss in seats for the president's party is 25, going back to after World War II. And you may argue, well, we're more polarized. We have a lot of gerrymandering. It's not as
We've
much
already sorted those out.
Sure, but look, Joe Biden's Democrats lost 9 seats in 2022, which was relatively good for a president's party, and they picked up a Senate seat. And so Democrats were generally applauded for holding the line, but they still lost the House, even with that. Democrats now need to pick up a 3 to take back the House once the vacancies get filled, just basing off of where you were at Election Day 2024. So even a relatively good Republican year is almost sure to mean that Democrats take the House. So if you have less swing, you still can probably get 3, 4, 5. And if you squeeze out a few more out of Texas, again, I can't be totally clairvoyant. Maybe that would save the day, but probably not. And at minimum, it's a risk because gerrymandering technology has gotten a lot better. I understand that with computers and AI and whatnot. But as far as I can tell, every analysis I've seen of this Texas redraw is based on the 2024 election. And that's nuts. That is nuts to base a gerrymandering on one election, on one data point. 4 of the 5 districts that they claim they're going to pick up are Latino majority districts. So you might see them referenced as plus 10 Trump districts. Okay, in 2024, when there was a huge swing to the right.
And Trump was on the ballot.
And Trump was on the ballot. All the data we've seen in the past year is that pendulum's swinging back, particularly in the Latino community. So I would never base a gerrymander on that one data point alone. And so I'm not saying Democrats are wrong to panic about this and make a big stink about it, but it's very possible that this is not thought out well on the Republicans' part. And if it provokes Democrats to do redistricting in New York and California, it may be even more than a wash for Democrats.
All right. I think we can leave it on that. Bill, anything you want to plug?
Well, I mentioned my 2 recent pieces at the Washington Monthly, so check those out at WashingtonMonthly.com.
Awesome. Well, check out my podcast with Charles Fain Lehman of the Manhattan Institute, where we talked about data and crime statistics, and it's pretty wonky. So it's not as much punditry, but I think you'll enjoy it if you like that topic. Read me at the LA Times and The Hill, and catch us back here hopefully next week in the DMZ, Bill.
All right, take care.
See you, man.
All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and put this car in the garage. Everybody, please make sure you hit the like buttons on the way out. Sorry for the short show. We haven't even made it to 2.5 hours yet, but I have a chore. Gotta pack up my son and take him back to college. And so tomorrow when I start at 5:45, it'll be the start of empty nest weekend. Who knows what who knows what evil I will get into. So everybody, please make sure you subscribe to the John Galt Urban Landlord channel, to Urban Landlord Clips, and most importantly to the Stanley Cross channel at Stanley Cross 6000. I might do a show when I get back, but I'm not going to guarantee it. It just depends on what all I have to do, which probably won't be much. So if I think of something to talk about, I will. By the way, at 6 p.m. Eastern time, I am going to do a political show with my buddy Charles from Nigeria. We're going to be talking about DC, the Trump takeover of DC, and his show. He thinks it's all a big distraction, and he's right about that. But we'll get into a little bit of detail and that sort of stuff about about what's going on in DC, and I get the feeling that this is gonna peter out to be nothing much. Just looking at that video of that U Street corridor thing where there was hardly anybody out on the streets, which may be a good thing. But you got 100 people protesting, and these were not urban, young, thug-looking people. So we'll talk about it later. And thank you. And at a minimum, I will see you at the normal time tomorrow morning around 5:45, 6 in the morning. And Saturday show, I don't really have a topic. If anybody comes up with something, just email me or something like that. And I will see you all either this afternoon, which there's a 50-50 shot. Definitely tomorrow morning, that'll be 100% shot. So take it easy, y'all.